The following is a quarantine recording presented to you in around sound. It was recorded with whatever was lying around.
Lady don't take no shit, insist on respect the sister, walk around like a womanish. She won't speak unless it's something worth saying, don't play. The girl take herself so serious, man. People stare curious, man. She got a natural way, her hips sway furious, man. Yeah, the luxurious, man. Carries herself like the cutest, most prettiest thing you see this side of the bay.
Hey, this is Lady Don't Take No, your weekly roundup of all of the real and none of the fake. I'm your host, Alicia Garza. This show is pro-Black, pro-queer, proudly feminist, and pro-do-what-you-like. Every week, you're going to get the best of what goes on in my head, what we're loving on and what we're hating on, what we might be and what we ain't going to do. Politics, pop culture, who I want to pop off on this week, we cover it all. We're recording from Oakland, California, the center of the known universe, where we are on Rona lockdown. It's a weird time. It's a scary time. It's all the kinds of time. But don't worry. We're going to help you pass the time every single week. So be sure to tune in, tell a friend, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We do it for the culture, so the pod is free 99 because we know that stimulus check, it's got to last.
Her interests are all limitless. She ain't limited by inhibitions, Lord.
Okay, I'm so excited for my guest this week because, frankly, I need her in my life. She is a New York Times best-selling author of You Were Born for This, Astrology for Radical Self-Acceptance. She has been a counseling astrologer for more than 20 years, guiding her community of over 1 million monthly readers to discover and live out their life's purpose. She's been featured in the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Rolling Stone, The New Yorker. Did we talk about O Magazine? And she's all over TV and the internets, and she is here with us now. She also throws a most excellent party. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Chani Nicholas.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you on. And we have to talk about all the things. Before we started recording, I was telling you today is the weirdest day. And I'm pretty sure we're like in the first part of a new moon, which totally makes sense. I got chased by a squirrel today, Chani. I just need to tell you. I have no idea what's going on. But if
what
this
were you
is
doing?
the new... Literally, I was on a conference call and smoking a cigarette, and the squirrel just like raised up on me and literally was like trying to flex, running towards me while I, in my Birkenstocks and my little short shorts and sports bra, because I had just gotten off the exercise bike, went running, screaming into the streets. I am not a delicate flower, my friends. I am born and raised in the Bay, and I know a little bit of something about raising up on raccoons, possums, pigeons, the geese at the lake, which also flex on you. But this was like a whole new reality.
Wow.
So we're going to need you to tell us what's going on.
Yeah, like the smaller the creature, the kind of more wary. Like, obviously big creatures are scary, but when they're small, they could just go anywhere really quickly.
Oh, yeah. I had this image of the thing running up my leg and like sitting on top of my head and just like
making an example
really
of
working
you.
it out. Yeah, and so I thought to myself, if this is the new moon,
I don't know
what's going to happen when we get to the full moon?
They're just like, listen, the cars and planes have drastically lowered, so we are now taking over.
They're like, you humans are vulnerable, and we are taking our country back. Talk about making America great again. So anyway, so Chani, we had you on as a guest on Sunstorm, which is the pod that iJen Poo and I have together. Shout out to our love, iJen.
And in a different world, in a different time, 2 months ago.
Correct. And I confessed to you right then and there that I loved you before I actually knew you. And that because I loved you before I knew you, I made up a nickname for you in my mind, which was Chan Chan. And I professed my love to you, and then I asked for your permission to call you Chan Chan to your face when I've been calling you Chan Chan in my mind for years now.
It's an honor.
So Tell me, has the nickname caught on? I mean, has there been a mass movement of people who now want to call you Chan Chan since we released the pod?
I mean, I definitely have a lot of different nicknames, also because people aren't quite sure about like how my name actually works. And so I know there's Chani Nicholas.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
That's excellent.
It makes sense because you're not quite sure about like how the letters all go and they can kind of blur together.
That's so good.
Yeah, but no, you're the only person that I know that does that one.
I'm holding that as a badge of honor. I want you to know that. I also realized that I didn't ask you the most obvious question, and so I'm going to ask it to you right now. Have you ever noticed that nobody ever asks astrologers what their sign is? What is your sign?
People ask me all the time, but I never answer.
And tell me why. Tell me why.
Because a lot of it's like I like to keep some things for myself. And also, I think it's an interesting part of astrology, but it's the least interesting part of astrology to me is the sun sign.
That makes sense.
I really want to know like what the rest of your chart is doing. So it's a way for me to like, it's my escape clause of being stereotyped into being seen only as the memes would have me.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's like, she ain't shit. She's a Taurus. That's why she's saying that kind of thing.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, fair enough. And so in response, Chan Chan says, none of your damn business. Fair enough. I'm with that. So everything has changed in the last couple of weeks. And I can't even believe I'm saying that. January feels like it was 35 years ago.
35.
But when we talked last, you told us that 2020 was really going to mark a whole series of beginnings and endings.
Yeah.
And that it was an important time on the clock of the world, as our sister Grace Lee Boggs was known to say. Your reading was so clear, in fact, that we are experiencing a country that has gone batshit crazy. What else do the stars say about what's in store for us, Chani? Because I feel like I need a little bit of runway, to get through this moment. Could you give us a little some?
Well, I do have colleagues of mine. Lisa Scheim was known to say way back in 2019, look, if we can just get through 2020, we'll be okay. So before, I or a lot of other astrologers knew what was going to happen, we were very wary of the year because it features astrology that generally tends to put an ending on one era and begin a new one. And also there's other markings in it that really do spell trouble, and as an astrologer leading up to that moment, you don't want to ever induce fear. You want to be able to keep people in a place of feeling their agency. And also you see this marking and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? And so, when January rolled around and, 45 did what he did in terms of being part of the assassination, and we weren't sure if there was going to be like another world war for a minute. I don't even know if you remember like way back then. Again, it was 30 years ago, a couple of months ago. But it was a lot of us thought like, oh, that is the mark, and now we're in for this thing. And then that kind of receded a little bit, and then this whole situation took over. And so now we're here. So astrology is an art of correlation. So you see something happening in the sky, and then you look to see how it's unfolding on Earth. And so all we can do is be like, okay, this mirrors pretty closely, because the last time we had one of the setups that we had at the beginning of the year, which was Saturn conjunct Pluto, was in the early 80s. And well, I want to acknowledge Jenna Wortham and Wesley Morris from Still Processing.
That's right.
They did this incredible reporting on the correlation between AIDS and what's happening right now with COVID. And in the early 80s, we were just coming to understand what AIDS actually was. But we were the world was in a state of having to grapple with it.
That's right.
And so there was a lot of these, like, the archetypes that we're talking about, their archetypal experiences of being alone and having to face a massive illness and even one's death, and also having to lose loved ones and not be able to be with them in the process of their passing. And so that's an eerie correlation that's happening. Of course, the two things are very different in nature, and politically there's similarities and there's differences. But there's still this kind of feeling of isolations, and we'll see about stigmatization, but also in that way of that we're having to grapple with death in a way that we haven't necessarily in a long time. And it's a kind of global experience that at least we're all, privy to and impacted by in very different ways, but still it's something that we're moving through together.
That's huge. That's a big deal. And let's just sit with that for a second, because what I'm hearing you say is that there's a death of the old order and a birth of a new one.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly scary, but also ripe with a ton of opportunity from death and grief, right? Things can and do become reborn. Our consciousness expands, it raises. That time period that you're talking about in the early 80s is when I was born. And you're right, the world was undergoing a lot of upheaval. The AIDS crisis and the really staunch resistance to care by the administration at that time, which was led by George Herbert Walker Bush, back when Republicans were actually Republicans. Right?
They stood for something clear.
Correct. And we were clear about what they stood for. Now we're like, you just want to blow the whole shit up? That's what we're doing? Okay. Yeah. So that was happening. And he was standing by while thousands and thousands and thousands of people were dying. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the Berlin Wall was falling. And there was really a period where there was a lot of change emerging, right? Mm-hmm. And I can say that because I'm writing about this right now in my book. But what's also really deep about what you're telling me, and I don't know that our listeners know this, when you were talking to me just now about kind of the process of looking at what was happening with 2020, I had this image of you in a coven of other astrologers, having a conversation about, okay, so how are we going to break this news to people? And how are we going to do it responsibly?
Yeah.
I don't think people know that you have a coven. Can we talk about your coven real quick? That is really powerful and awesome.
I mean, well, yeah, there's a couple of astrologers that I definitely I follow a lot of people's work, and I'll want to know okay, this is what I'm seeing. What are you all thinking about? And then I've had a teacher for a very long time who is, my heart is breaking because she's retiring. So, but up until very recently, I was still, sitting with her at least monthly for an hour at a time. And we'd talk about these upcoming things possibly, or, the ways in which she was seeing things roll out or kind of come down the pike. And every once in a while, an astrologer will put out just an amazing think piece on something and tie everything together. So there is this network. We might not, I think some astrologers do sit together and talk a lot, but I'm not necessarily always in the rounds of all of those conversations, but I am keeping up with my colleagues' take on things, because it's just like any other profession. It's really great to get different points of view on. But yeah, you see this kind of astrology happens roughly a couple of the things I'm talking about happen every 30 years or so. And so we're always looking at these kind of chunks of time, okay, what's seeded back then, what started, and how is it unfolded? And now let's all sit and watch how this is gonna, what will begin, what will be the thing that we will be forced to reckon with this time around. And it just so happens that it's got a lot of very strange similarities to the very last time it happened. And so we can look and see, okay, well, who's not getting care? Who is actually suffering the most given these circumstances? And it's, of course, going to be similar populations, Black and brown folks, the suffering that happened then in the early 80s and since, but, in that particular situation. And now are unfortunately mirroring each other. And I know when I jumped on the call, you were talking about some of the statistics of who's being impacted and how. Mm-hmm. That's where my mind then goes. It's like, okay, well, then what are the systems still in place that are perpetuating the harm and the kind of neglect that is, of course, a setup and also totally criminal. So how have we changed, how have we advanced, and how are we actually still in the same place?
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. And dare I overuse the word deep? Black folks have been done wrong AF by this country ever since we were brought here in the bottoms of boats and chained to one another. One thing I do know is that even in the worst of dynamics and situations, Black folks do not give up without a fight. Mm-hmm. So not to be the eternal optimist here, there is a lot of death and a lot of carnage that is happening all around us right now. And I think it's true that we should expect more. Mm-hmm. I can't help but feel like there's also something ripe about this moment as well. Mm-hmm. So much is being exposed, whether it be our connections and our relationships to each other being laid bare, right? Like I'm seeing all around people being like, yeah, actually, I realize I don't like this person and I'm just done with it. Or like, you know, just really like the ways in which we all depend on each other so deeply is really being exposed as well. And so I don't know. Do the stars say anything about us coming together and rising up to build the biggest, baddest fucking movement that this country ever seen, or not?
Always.
Okay, great.
Always.
Great.
But
great.
It, you know, like the moment definitely calls for us to grapple with the underbelly of what occurs. And I can say that the fall, you know, September, October, November looks like another bout of very challenging astrology. And it's a very challenging corner for us to turn. And now, given this place that we're in, it's like, well, of course, you know, I mean, we always were like the election, great, you know, difficult astrology is happening around the election. Right. How awesome.
Right.
But
exactly.
now that we're up against the challenges of how will we actually get our votes physically to the places.
Right. Can we vote? Is that like, we're literally at that stage now. Are we going to be able to do this shit or not?
Yeah. And all the different things. So, you know, it's kind of like, okay, well, this is the setup that we're in now. And so that now also makes a lot of sense.
I love that.
This is the place where it gets, you know, challenging and sticky for sure. But we also are seeing, like you said, like this clarity in the air, and I can hear birds chirp, and, you know, the wildlife is just like, they are good. They are happy and they're fine. And it just really makes me feel like, what if all the corporations, what if all of the people that held the most wealth, what if all the ways in which we move about the planet had to be done in a way that was going to make sure that life here was sustainable? Like, we can change everything. That's what this moment opens up for me. It's like, it's all changed now. And I know there's a lot of suffering happening because of it, but it's because our systems aren't set up in a way that help us foster care and life here. And we can change it. Like, it is possible.
We must.
Yeah, we have to. And so it feels like a pocket of like deep grief and confusion and sorrow, and like it's a challenging moment, but it's also like, wow, there's a clarity that didn't exist before.
In some ways, I wonder if that clarity is like, there's no going back, right?
Yeah.
We're not going back to some faux normal, that actually the only way is through. And I'm hearing you, and I'm hearing this astrology telling us that it's going to be hard, right? But there's something on the other side. So we got to go through it to get there. Is that true?
I think, yeah, for me, it's like, you know, the greatest disappointment would be if we just hopped back on the train, you know, and just went about our business like this didn't happen. Yeah. Then it's all in vain. Then all of the care and all of the work that's actually being done in the moment by all of the, you know, care workers of our culture, that would have not been for much. And so I'm of the school of thought that everything that's happening needs to be used for our evolution or our healing or our, ability to live here with greater meaning and hopefully more connection and maybe even a little bit of peace here and there.
So, Chani,
Yeah.
I have your book. It's on my nightstand. You were born for this. And I just have so many things to say. When we talked last, I hadn't opened the cover yet. And now I have opened the cover and I have made it my little secret weekend project, like learning more about my astrology, which I'm loving. Lots and lots of people are talking about Rona projects, but honestly and truly, if you wanted and needed something right now to help you make sense of your life, whether you're an astrology buff or not, I'm pretty sure you need this book in your life. So I want to talk with you about this book, Chani. And first, let me tell you, one thing that really struck me about your book was how you got your start. I would have assumed that you had been this like badass, I already know what I'm doing, astrologer right from birth, right? But actually, in your book, you tell a totally different story that had me enraptured, especially that you started all this when you were at school in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, girl, how did I miss this? I'm born and raised here. How did we not like meet each other and know each other? Because I was running those streets. I was needing you in my life back then. So I feel cheated. WTF. Can you tell our listeners what was going on? I mean, this is a really powerful story.
Well, I really felt the need to go back to school. And I felt very, very, very unworthy, unable. I didn't feel smart enough. School, I had a big block around education. Mm-hmm. And I finally got up enough courage to apply to finish my bachelor's so I could go eventually get my master's. And one of the best programs like that was easy to complete and also seemed really interesting was the bachelor's completion program at CIIS, the California Institute of Integral Studies. And I went, and it was one of those educational moments where all of the right professors and educators came into my life and held me with so much compassion and are just such incredible wisdom holders themselves and educators that it helped me to use that part of myself in a way that I hadn't in so long. And it really reignited my activist mind and self. And I really wanted to start writing. And the thing I knew how to write about was astrology. Not that I had written about it before, but I just felt like that was my skill set. That's what I knew. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to put to use all of the wisdom that so many people over the decades, but also very much immediately in that moment, were giving me. And so I just started writing. And I didn't think anyone was going to like the intersection of, astrology and, identity politics or whatever I was writing about. So I just was writing for myself, and I put it up on Facebook once, and then I founded a blog spot. And
yes, blog spot, you better come through. Yes.
And that was it. And they were unedited, really messy, very long, badly worded pieces.
Angsty,
definitely overthought, overwrought. But something in them people liked, and it encouraged me to keep writing. And so it was like this really big opening for me.
I love that.
Yeah. And when you're just held by certain people and it gives you that confidence that you need to do the thing, that's really what I felt from that experience.
I love that. Well, I can tell you, when I discovered your horoscopes, I actually remember you talked about Black Lives Matter in the horoscope, and I literally lost my shit. I was like, who is this person? How do they know about us? Are there cameras out here? Like, who's watching us?
Oh my God.
And I think that was the first day that I started to call you Chan Chan in my mind.
Oh.
And I believe I actually posted on Facebook, "Oh, Chan Chan, you complete me." So
I would have died if I read that. Well, that is to say that the activism and the activists in San Francisco greatly educated me and inspired me also. So it was that whole mix, because we do have people in common, from that era and beyond. But it was like I was being so fed and so like just awakened by all of the incredible activism and art that's always happening in San Francisco, but especially around that time.
Oh, yeah, I remember. I think I was running these streets. I met my partner in San Francisco at that time.
You did?
I sure did, during a protest.
What a love story.
It was pretty excellent. I was doing security and I had no idea how to do it. I'll tell that story on another episode of the pod. But I met my partner in that era. And I also was doing volunteer work at San Francisco Women Against Rape and like expanding my whole mind, consciousness, heart, and life. So there was a time in San Francisco where everything was possible. And it looked like everywhere we looked, there was action and activity, beautiful politics and expression. You could walk down the street and see Tracy Chapman and be like, "Oh my God," And then now, there's glittery streets now on Valencia. Yes.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird.
Heartbroken.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a random and weird question,
Please?
But one I'm so curious about? Last time on the pod, I talked about unique Rona habits that we are developing now that we are sheltered in place, right? And physical distancing. I feel like there's a lot of time that we're spending with ourselves and we're discovering new things about each other. And so I wanted to ask you, Chani, are you developing any unique Rona habits?
Well, I'm cooking all the time, and I'm actually a better cook than I have finally, after decades of my life trying to do this, I have mastered the chewy chocolate chip cookie.
You know what? You deserve a standing ovation for this.
I feel so
this
proud.
This is a big deal.
I mean,
this is a really big deal.
And if I can offer some advice to anybody out there struggling, it's about leaving the cookie batter in the fridge for a full night, at least 12 hours to 24.
It's amazing.
And it makes them like caramelly and crunchy and so I feel really proud of that. So I've baked cakes. I've never baked a cake in my life.
Oh, yes.
Like I'm making all kinds of dinners and they're all really great. So it's like this whole new skill that I've more fully developed.
That is fantastic.
But I think I sleep in and I am tired when I wake up. I don't know if that's a habit that I've formed, but that's just like an observation. Like I do not jump out of bed, even though I went to sleep at a good hour and I got like 10 hours sleep sometimes. I'm like, wow, okay, I'm waking up tired again.
Yeah.
And I'm just letting myself be a lot more. Like I am not harassing myself as much as I usually do. And I'm getting the work done. So maybe that's a good lesson.
Yeah, I feel like we're learning all kinds of things right now, including that the world won't stop if you slow down.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And that, of course, our bodies get it way quicker than our minds do. So it makes perfect sense to me that you would be like, I'm just going to hang out in this bed for a little bit because I ain't got it right now. And what you going to do about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just get serious in these streets for a minute. The reality is this Rona thing, it's actually like multiple things and they're totally scary AF. And I imagine that a lot of us are out here trying to live our lives and make the best of it. But I got to admit, there's probably about 3 times a day where I'm like sad or anxious or afraid. You know, you and I have talked about astrology being a guide and not a script. And helping you make sense of the brilliance that you are, right? There was a purpose in your creation. At the very moment that you came into the world, you were shaped. And also, it's like your destiny was kind of, not determined, but it became possible. And so I wonder if you can tell our listeners anything about whether or not astrology can help us manage anxiety and grief, especially right now.
Yeah, I really think that that's when astrology becomes popular, because if we can hold the most challenging parts of our experience in context, then it can give us a little bit of distance and space from it. And that's what astrology can do. It can give us this like mirroring of our experience. And we need mirrors. And especially when we're isolated, I mean, humans are social creatures and we have all those mirror neurons and we need to see other people to know that we're okay. And we don't have that right now. So in a way, if astrology speaks to you, it can be that kind of mirror. Mm-hmm. I do believe we live in a benevolent universe that demands that we grapple with the most challenging parts of being human, but that in that reflection, there's always hope and possibility.
Oh, I love that. Switching gears just a little bit, you mentioned your excellent partner, Sonia. And
yeah.
I sometimes think we just don't give enough love to the partners out there. I know this last few weeks has been absolutely bananas. And I know I spent the first week or so probably in the same clothes, complaining all day, eyes wild, and looking like I might join the zombie apocalypse, right? So under those circumstances, I'm already hard to deal with outside of a global pandemic. So add water and watch out.
You're not on a plane. You're
yes,
not in a car.
No, I'm not in a plane. I'm not in a car. I'm not living out of a suitcase. So my partner is pretty excellent. And I know that your partner, Sonia, is pretty fucking excellent too. Mm-hmm. Tell me, what is your favorite thing about your partner and how they're showing up during the Rona apocalypse?
Oh, God, how long do we have? I mean, okay. She is one of the wisest, most capable, grounded humans I've ever met. And she's also unafraid of anything. Okay, this is a good example. Mm-hmm. We do have an alarm in our house. And the other night at 5 a.m, the alarm went off for the first time in my life. I've never had an alarm in my house. And this was the first. Oh, sorry. So 5 a.m, the alarm goes off and I bolt up and she's sleeping. And I'm like, babe. And she's like, what? And I'm like, the alarm. She's like, oh. Like she was sleeping through the alarm.
That's gangster.
We get up and she goes, what are you doing? I was like, I'm getting up. The alarm's going off. She's like, great. And so we both get out of bed. I close the bedroom door. She puts on her house coat and she opens the bedroom door and she storms out into the outside. And I was like, where are you going? She goes, I'm going to go get them. My wife is 5'1", and she was going to go get whoever was in her house or doing whatever. I mean,
I love
she
it.
is
in her house coat.
She's just out there in her house coat, like nothing else.
That's excellent. She's like, I'm going to beat that ass.
I was like, hold on. Like she wouldn't even let me go first. She was down the stairs. I mean, she was just like.
So good.
I was like, whoa. And she was half asleep still.
That's so good. Oh my gosh.
She's
always
fierce
ready.
And she is ready. And she's like that. Like if anybody comes for anybody that she loves, that's who she is in the face of it. Oh. She is just ready to fight for her people. And she does that in her work and she does that in her relationships. And she does it also with so much care. And she's just the most thoughtful person. So she knows, she's sending people care packages and birthday presents in the midst of all of this. She's got her wits about her and she's just an incredible leader. And so she does that in all areas of our life. And I am eternally grateful And she's just so much fun to be with.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is true.
We just have a really good time together.
I can co-sign.
Yeah. I was single for long enough. I could have kept being single. Like I wasn't about to be with somebody that wasn't the funnest person to be with.
Oh, yeah. Well done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like that, my friends, it is time for our weekly roundup of all the things that we love and all the things that we just ain't gonna do. Here's the roundup of the things that Lady just ain't gonna do this week. Number 1, anti-Asian violence. Y'all, come on now. Blaming Asian people for the Rona is like blaming indigenous people for smallpox. It's a whole ass basic fact that your president was briefed, warned, urged to take action, and he didn't. And that is why people are dying, because we didn't actually prepare for what was inevitable. One of my family members hit me on email the other day, irate about the fact that Too Tan For You, aka your president, has been calling this virus the Chinese virus. My family member is right. This is not the Chinese virus. It's the Trump virus. Give credit where credit is due. Besides, he loves to take credit for stuff, so throw a dog a bone. Trump virus. Pass it on. Number 2, things that Lady just ain't gonna do this week. Drink bleach to kill a virus in my body. What kind of stupid shit is this? Poison control centers are reporting an increase in calls for help from people who would let this president lead them into the pits of hell, and basically did so because they drink bleach to kill a virus that they don't Never mind. The moral of the story is household disinfectants are for the house, not for the body. Your president is not a doctor. And I cannot believe that we have to say this, but please, for the love of God, do not drink bleach. Unless, of course, you're a white supremacist. In that case, can I get you a straw and perhaps a couple of cubes of ice? Last thing Lady just ain't gonna do this week is have exes slide up into your DMs. Now, can we talk about this right now? I hope y'all have already seen the latest episode of Insecure because it's excellent. But it got me thinking, we're in a time right now where, people got time on their hands and people miss connection. So you might be considering it when your ex slides up into your DMs. But let me just share this small piece of wisdom for you. Trust me, this is going to last you and it's going to take you a long way. Exes are exes for a reason. It takes a lot to break an intimate connection with someone. And sure, sometimes maybe you're wrong, but most of the time, it was probably right. Don't let the Rona be the reason you start chit-chatting with your ex again. Y'all ever notice how you start looking at that ex differently again just in time for your latest life crisis? Okay, so take it from me. Leave that ex alone. Take up knitting. Distract yourself from the impulse and learn how to do headstands if you're trying to unlock another achievement. Better yet, just give it 3 months. If you still want to talk to your ex then, let's revisit it. But let's at least agree on one thing. After that honeymoon period, are you really trying to be co-quarantined with that person who couldn't ever really get it together to buy you some flowers or be interested in your opinions or figure out a way to help you split the bills? Nah, as my mama used to say, I could do better by my damn self. You can too. Leave your ex alone and wish them well on their next. Now, let's get into the things that Lady likes. Lady loves warm weather. Warm weather is finally coming to the Bay, and Lord, it could not have happened sooner. It is the Bay, so we know an 80-degree day can quickly be followed by one that is 55 degrees and rainy, but nonetheless, spring is here for real, and summer is not too far behind. There's something about a clear blue sky and warmth on my skin that makes me feel like just maybe things could be all right. I'm gonna just go ahead and hold on to this feeling this week because I can and because you're not the boss of me. Number 2, things that Lady loves. Creative, direct action during the time of the Rona. I have been seeing people placing body bags outside of Trump Tower, car caravans to free people from prisons and to cancel the rent. Proof positive that you cannot keep a good movement down. Shout out to everybody who's doing safe, physically distanced, direct action in this moment where we really got to raise the stakes. And lastly, Lady loves this week the mayors and governors who are actually leading during this crisis while your president is in the tanning bed without enough UV light. Extend the stay-at-home order? 100%, absolutely. I want to live, and I know you do too. And this is how we do it. Stay home, save lives. Besides, y'all see what's happening with the free-to-get-a-haircut protesters? Folk are out here getting sick with the Rona. They don't believe in government. They don't believe in masks. So now let's see if they believe in medicine. Double level up if it's a Black doctor that has to provide it. Anyhow, what y'all having for dinner? Oh my God, I cracked myself up.
You were born for this, Alicia.
Oh my God.
I love it.
Yes,
I love it.
We have reached the end of our show, but I will be back here every single Friday morning laughing my ass off at my own self and to accompany you where you used to have a commute. Thank you, Chani, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
If people want to hear more from you, where can they connect with you? Where can they find you?
I am on the gram at Chani Nicholas. And of course, my website is chaninicholas.com. Twitter is Chani Nicholas. It's all the same.
Okay. Hey. That is all for Lady Don't Take No. We appreciate you joining us, and we hope to see you back next week. Please connect with us and let us know what's on your mind, what you like, and what you just ain't gonna do. On Twitter, we're at Lady Take. On Insta, we're at Lady Don't Take No Pod, and we're also on Facebook too. Just look up Lady Don't Take No Podcast. We post ways to do something about the things you hear on this show on our social media. So if we got you amped up today, check out our socials to find out how you can take action. Please subscribe and please write us a review. Let the people know what you've heard here today. Our producer is Phil Circus. Our incredible theme is by Latyrix. This pod is supported by the Black Futures Lab. And I'm your host, Alicia Garza. Remember, bosses of a feather flock together. Bleach is for your countertops, not for your esophagus. Astrology can help you take control of your own life and your own choices. And beating up Asian people is not actually doing anyone any good. Plus, it's racist, so there's that. That's right, I said it, because Lady Don't Take No.
Lady don't take no shit, insist on respect the sister, walk around like a womanish. She won't speak unless it's something worth saying, don't play. The girl take herself so seriously. People stare curiously. She got a natural way, her hips sway furiously. Yeah, the luxuriously. Carries herself like the cutest, most prettiest thing you see this side of the bay. Go about her business so purpose.
Love y'all.
She got razor sharp wit.